As global cities compete for talent, investment and vibrancy, improvement districts are becoming powerful engines of change. I'm Belinda Coates and The Connector starts now. Welcome to the program. Today we're joined by Opportunity London CEO Jace Tyrrell. We're going to unpack how improvement districts are reshaping London and what Australia can learn from their success. And I'm very excited to have Jace here today because he's actually, I would say, one of the world's experts in business improvement districts. So welcome, Jace. Thanks for joining us. Jace, you recently...
Hello from London. Great to be with you.
It's so nice to see you. So Jace, you recently visited Australia as part of the Opportunity London campaign. So can you tell us a little bit about how you found Australia and how you found the appetite for investment in London when you came to visit?
So look, Opportunity London has a mission to unlock the next 100 billion of capital investment into and across London, real estate, energy and infrastructure. And Australia is a really important market for the UK, about 10% of our global capital flows. So we will keep visiting down under, but actually the bonds are very strong between Australia and London. Over 100 years of trade and investment into the billions. And actually there's quite a lot of appetite for London, long-term investors into real estate, into infrastructure, to look at the projects and the schemes that we have in the capital right now. But there's also a growing, I think, opportunity of some of the pension and institutional funds from the UK thinking about Australia as well. So long may those trade and those bonds and those investment decisions continue between the two countries and the major capital cities in Australia.
We definitely would love to see a little bit more of the UK pension funds looking at Australia, but we can talk about that another time. What's been really exciting, I think, is that quite an interest in London. And why is it so safe? Why do Australians love considering, or why do global investors consider London so safe?
Well, I think Australia and the UK obviously have a rule of law that's very similar, based on the same model. And I think also London in particular is a very liquid city. So for global investors, the scale is there, the return is there, the entry, the exit into the market. And that sort of sovereign risk is less so perhaps in a country like the UK and London, given what's happening in other countries and other cities around the world right now. So I think that has certainly come up on our radar through those discussions. And I think in a world where global capital has a choice, which asset is going to invest into, which country, which city, which partner, London still ticks a very strong demand bucket list and investor appetite. And we are the most globally traded city in the world. So again, I think that's sparking the interest from Australia investors in particular.
It definitely does. And so today we're talking about improvement districts and what we can learn from London. So it's not only safe, it's actually quite innovative in the way that London has gone about bringing people together and building precincts. Can you, for people who don't know what an improvement district is, can you explain that quickly for us?
I feel like I'm the king of improvement districts, given I've been working with this model almost for about 25 years. But it actually came from North America and Canada. Its simplest terms is when major owners and businesses come together, whether it's a high street or a main street in Australia, a town or a city, to get an outcome collectively. So it is a form of governance where businesses invest alongside the public sector to get outcomes for their city, their town or their place. And those outcomes can be sustainability focused, commercial, managing development. There's actually 2,000 of these improvement districts around the world solving, very complex and different issues. And they can be very small improvement districts on an industrial estate, right down to the whole of, parts of Manhattan are an improvement district. And I'm sure we'll come on to the West End company, which I ran for a number of years in central London. So it's a great governance model. And I think in this world where partnership in real-term delivery is critical, there's going to be more of these coming. And certainly in Australia, the appetite seems to be getting more and more. Although 20 years late to the party, I would suggest, at least they're coming to the party now. Down under.
I would like to know, why are we so slow to the party? There's 2,000 around the world, as you say, and you've spent the last few years supporting one of the first in Australia, which is Sydney Waterfront. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, just to answer the first question, I think in the global context, Australia has really strong public local council leadership and investment. And actually, it's one of the most wealthiest countries in the world. And I think perhaps where improvement districts started out was a lack of public sector investment into towns, and it was needed sort of to deal with that. But I think, coming out of COVID, particularly in the Australian market, there's a real recognition that, you need to work together, invest collectively, share risks together as well, which is why I think we've seen more interest in Australia in the last few years. But you're right, Belinda, I've been involved with the New Sydney Waterfront Company almost for 5 years now. And we've been putting together a voluntary partnership, some major owners down in Australia along the waterfront, from the Sydney Fish Market right up to the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And you've got people like Charter Hall, GPT, Lendlease, Blackstone and others sort of involved in this initiative. And we've been piloting a number of programs to demonstrate the value of what a formal improvement district, because you do need enabling legislation. And without going into a whole session on the legislative requirements around improvement districts, you do need something to put a official mandate in place in order to get the investment of the levy and also deliver the program. And the good news is, in New South Wales, they now have the enabling legislation on the books. They're just going through the regulation. All being well, we'll be going to our ballot of businesses in the March, April time next year to get the first formal improvement district off the ground in Australia, which will be a real privilege to have been involved with.
That will be so exciting, and I commend you and the team for all of the hard work you've been able to do to make that happen and what we can learn from that. So you were also in Melbourne last month meeting with our Lord Mayor Nicholas Rees and a number of the key stakeholders of the Docklands, which has been, a very talked about precinct for some time. Do you think a business improvement district or an improvement district is the answer to saving Docklands?
Well, savings are a big undertaking, isn't it? But I think, look, I think the improvement district model is right in many cases. I think you've always got to ensure there is a genuine business appetite, if you're looking at a business improvement district type model, to want this. And it does feel from early conversations in Melbourne, there is an appetite for a new form of governance, particularly in the Docklands, but also perhaps around Collins Street and some of the sort of city centre areas with the retail and leisure and the office sector. So I hope actually we can bring the model to Melbourne and Victoria. I've been a big advocate of a sustainability improvement district type model. So take the same governance around getting collective investment to get an outcome, but how do we do retrofit at scale? How do we get businesses onto cleaner energy? How do we think about the social sort of impact programs that can be delivered by local sort of businesses coming together? So yes, I'm encouraged by the appetite, particularly the new Lord Mayor. Not so new now, actually. I think he's a year in, isn't he? But certainly they continue the conversations in Melbourne, because it does seem to be a wide open door there.
There definitely is, and it seems to have created a bit of a groundswell, and there is interest now from other states and other precincts. So do you think we're going to start seeing more conversations and more groups coming together pushing for improvement districts in Australia?
I think so. And there's live conversations, in Western Australia with Perth. There's also Adelaide's been looking at this for quite some time. A chap called David West, actually, who's been a big proponent of the improvement district model. So I do think there's going to be more. And thinking about Queensland with the Olympics and Brisbane, you could have Olympic improvement districts. Thinking about the long-term legacy
an Olympic improvement district, yeah.
First in the world in Australia. So you can be the last but the first in equal measure, right? So yeah, I do think the conversations will continue, but it was really important to move at pace to get the enabling legislation in. It has taken almost 5 years in New South Wales, which doesn't seem long in the grand scheme of improvement districts. But I think for investors and businesses wanting to move at pace to get their city centres reactivated and the values improved, and we've got to move a bit quicker, I think, in getting the legislation into these states as well.
Jace, you were involved in one of the first improvement districts in London at Oxford Street. And last week at the London Investment Summit and the Real Estate Forum, there was a conversation about high streets and are there too many high streets in Europe and can they all survive? Tell us a little bit about Oxford Street and what was happening last week with the pedestrianisation. That looked really fun. And I left the day after, so I'm sad about that.
Yeah. It was sad we didn't take some of your spend when you were here, Belinda, in London. But I think just on the first point, it was the West End companies. So it was Bond Street, Oxford Street, Regent Street and Mayfair. So, really important part of retail and leisure. I think 1 in 10 jobs in London actually came from that bit of London. And we ran a number of programs on city management, activation, marketing, public realm. You would have seen the transformation of Bond Street and Hanover Square with the Elizabeth line as well. But Oxford Street's now been taken over by the mayor in terms of the planning and sort of regulatory powers. He set up a mayoral development corporation here, but one of his grand commitments and pledges is to actually pedestrianise parts of Oxford Street for the future. And I think the improvement district there, New West End Company, will be very involved in that. But I think you think about most high streets or main streets around the world now, they do have no cars or fewer vehicles, and it is pedestrian first. I was struck by George Street when I was living in Sydney a couple of years ago as well. Just what a different environment that was, actually, to have that sort of pedestrian first approach. So yeah, great to see it being traffic free, because it hasn't been traffic free since pre-COVID, I think. But there'll be a number of initiatives, I'm sure, with the improvement district locally, with the mayor's office and the local council and the businesses to really activate and transform Oxford Street into the period ahead, and also with the Crown Estate and Regent Street. There's a huge opportunity there to join that all up together and really change the centre of London as a sort of global city retail leisure centre. But generally, there's fewer retailers. You know, post-COVID, high streets have changed in main streets. So it's what is the mixed use sort of town or city centre of the future? How do you encourage different uses? I'm really struck by Canary Wharf right now. And thinking about sort of post-COVID and the mixed use they have down there with their life sciences, their leisure, their BTR, is extraordinary. And I think they are the poster child of what we're going to see in global city centres of urban regen and mixed use. And they're doing it, they're delivering it, we're seeing it before our eyes. And I think places like Docklands in Melbourne, for example, should really take a good look at what's happening in Canary Wharf right now, because I think there's some really good learnings from what's happening on both sides of the world.
There's so much we can learn from each other, and I definitely get a lot of energy when I come to London, and I'm getting the energy from you now, Jace, and we really appreciate all that you do to inspire Australia. We're almost out of time. We've covered quite a lot, so I wondered whether you could, as a passing end to the conversation, give us some tips on what we could do for Collins Street to bring it up to the level of an Oxford Street by introducing an improvement district to Collins Street in Melbourne or other key streets in Australia.
Yeah, look, I think the improvement district model is probably right for Collins Street. I think there's a lot of fragmented ownership down there, and there's a different type of ground floor and the office market. But I think that is one part of the ingredients. I think the City of Melbourne needs to be very clear what they want in the future of their main sort of retail street. And I think, you know, you've got to be innovative. I would always say thinking about planning and licensing and taking a bit of risk, that's going to be really important as well to see Collins Street thrive in the future.
Amazing, Jace. We're just out of time. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, and all the best with the improvement district for Sydney Waterfront, New Sydney Waterfront. Thank you. Thanks for watching. This program has been brought to you by Harper B. This is Tika. We'll be right back.